The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to Navigating Disability. Today we're joined by Zoe Simmons, award-winning journalist, author, speaker, and fierce disability advocate. Zoe uses the power of storytelling to spark change, drawing from her lived experience with disability, chronic pain, autism, and mental illness. Her work spans global platforms, and she's a strong voice for inclusion, accessibility, and smashing stigma. Tune in as we talk courage, care, and why lived experience must lead the way. Thank you so much for joining us, Zoe.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello to anybody listening.
Zoe, you speak so openly about living with disability, chronic pain, autism, mental illness. What's the journey been like for you?
Well, it wasn't always that way. One, because I didn't realize I was disabled, despite the fact that I've been autistic my whole life and I've struggled with mental illness, mental health challenges my whole life. I didn't know they were disability, and I didn't know that I necessarily had them. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I started experiencing chronic pain and then developing into chronic illness, and didn't necessarily know what was happening to my body, unfortunately, because that's what happens for a lot of people assigned female at birth. We don't get listened to with our health. Medical gaslighting is quite common, as well as medical pet phobia. So it took me a long time to realize what I was experiencing was disability, and that I was allowed to call myself disabled, because as a society we don't really have a positive view of disability, and the kind of idea is to distance yourself as much as possible. And when I started calling myself disabled, lots of people were like, oh, don't call yourself that. And it just showed to me how much stigma there is, and whether or not I identify as disabled. I am disabled, so I have multiple disabilities now. So I really want to smash that stigma and that ableism that tells us to distance ourselves, because 20% of the population actually live with a disability, and access and inclusion benefits everybody. And so just smashing this stigma and this ableism, like, it really benefits no one except for maybe like the capitalist overlords. But so I just really want to make a difference with my lived experience, with my storytelling, and I'm grateful I get a chance to do that.
So what do you wish people better understood about the everyday realities of living with a disability?
I mean, honestly, I just wish the general population would consider the fact that disabled people exist. And I know that sounds like such a basic thing, but when it comes to business owners, when it comes to events, when it comes to the workplace, healthcare, education, literally anything, disability is pretty much not ever considered. And that is because people don't realize, and you don't know what you don't know. So, and because we don't have any education about disability, we don't really talk about it. We don't generally have positive, accurate representations in the media. We're generally either, that inspiration porn, or disability is tragedy. So people don't really know disability. They don't know what it can look like. They don't know that a lot of disabilities are actually dynamic and invisible. And I think there are a lot of people out there living with disabilities who are disabled, who don't know they're disabled, because we haven't, that word is such a bad word in our society when it really shouldn't be, because there are a lot of people that could be benefited by accessibility and inclusion. And, we fight into these non-disabled boxes all the time, to contort ourselves into these shapes that, even if it harms us. And so I guess my question is, why?
Well, it's a valid question. Absolutely. So
Your,
sorry, Kate,
sorry,
you go.
how has your experience of disability shaped how you see yourself and the world around you?
I am a person who has actually always really struggled with my self-image, self-love. I think part of that's being autistic, and growing up as an undiagnosed autistic, and not really getting to know yourself, because you tend to just mask away. But for me, my disabled identity has been really powerful, because it's meant that I don't have to play by the same playing field. I don't have to destroy myself to try and fit these ableist standards that don't benefit anyone. They certainly don't benefit me. So I guess by accepting and then adjusting my life as a result, for example, asking if my access needs to be met, and making sure I set boundaries with my body and what I need to do to care for myself. It has been super beneficial. And it's also been quite empowering because I can then use that lived experience to make a difference. And I know there are a lot of people who also struggle with their self-image, with their self-love. So I guess for me, disability is recognizing that, yeah, society has a lot of stigma and there's a lot of barriers, but we fight through it anyway. And we are such a diverse and talented and passionate community that will change the world. So it's made me pretty proud to be a part of this community that has such a history of, unfortunately, having to fight, but with that comes so much strength and so much power. So it's actually been quite empowering.
So, what does accessibility mean to you in practice, Zoe? Not just physically, but socially and emotionally.
So accessibility is there's so much that can be talked about when you talk about accessibility because there are so many different disabilities. However, it tends to just be wheelchair accessibility that most people think of. Oh, is it like a step-free access and can a wheelchair user get in? When it's so much more than that. Like there are people who can't speak, there are people who can't see, there are people who can't hear, and people with anxiety, people with chronic illness, people with energy impairments, people who are immunocompromised, and all these disabilities and things deserve to be catered for, but they're usually not. They're usually seen as like a hassle. Even asking for like event people to, for example, do small adjustments can often be such a nightmare. And it's really disappointing because those things really make such a difference in being able to be included. So for me personally, obviously I need wheelchair access because I often use a wheelchair, but I also need consideration for my anxiety. I need consideration for being autistic, which to me is just clear communication, written communication, and the fact that I have to say that blows my mind. But the whole neurotypical communication of see things between the lines when like we literally can't. It's all like, hey, I'll ask you a question, but it's not, we don't want the answer. But when you answer the question, you get in trouble. So it's like, but why'd you ask for feedback, for example? Sorry, I've jumped along. But basically it's just accessibility is acceptance and everyone deserves that.
Could not agree more.
I have a question, Zoe, and I'm not quite sure how to ask it. You talked about growing up and really not being who you are, masking and so forth. How did you unravel who you really were and then get to that acceptance stage of who you really were? Was it a defining moment? Was it a process? What was it for you?
Definitely a process. I would say I'm still unraveling. I think honestly, I just turned 30, so I feel like your teens and your 20s, specifically your 20s, are just such a wild ride. And living with complex mental health, I struggled a lot with things like self-harm, with things like attempted trigger warning, attempted suicide, and suicidal ideology, because I genuinely felt like this world wasn't a place for me. And after so many years of having such negative feedback, like for example, autistic people are basically told that we're wrong, that we shouldn't exist, and even if we don't know we're autistic, we still pick up on those messages, and those feelings. So I never really felt like it was a place for me. But I'm so sorry, I forgot the question.
How did you transform from feeling like that to where you are today?
Well, yeah, it is definitely a process, but I guess it's about a lot of therapy. I have a help of a psychologist, thank goodness. I think you really need to, I think everyone honestly should. We all have crap we need to deal with, and things that we've just accepted as true thoughts in our brains that aren't. Like, for example, I always used to think I was horrible and I'm not enough, and, I'm shameful, and I used to be told really not great things about my mental health, and being autistic and being so open about it was very shameful to people that were close to me, unfortunately. I guess it was just realizing that that's wrong, and that we shouldn't feel that. And for me personally, I kind of looked at all the negative messaging going on in my head, being like, maybe everyone doesn't hate me. Maybe I'm not terrible. And I know that sounds weird to have such poor opinions of yourself, but I think that's true of a lot of people, and we don't really talk about it. So instead of being ashamed, I've kind of gone the other way and been like, well, I'm just gonna Be proud, even if I'm terrified.
And I love that, Zoe. But from a personal perspective for myself, because I'm going through a similar thing, albeit 20 years later than you, I know in my head what's right and wrong and how I feel and who I am, but it doesn't change sometimes that feeling
Mm.
of not being good enough.
Yeah, I struggle with it a lot, and imposter syndrome. And I think we do that in many ways, like as people assigned female at birth, but also when it comes to things like disability, when it comes to any identity, people feel imposter syndrome. When it comes to work, people feel imposter syndrome. Um, so, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, brain fog.
No,
Um,
that's all right. I'm just trying to understand how you went from being told that you were no good and all that sort of stuff to then saying, well, no, I know I'm really good and I'm great and I'm this and that. But how do you change that feeling inside of you?
I think honestly, it's just starting by noticing and challenging those negative things. So when I notice negative self-talk about myself, I'm like, wait, I don't deserve that. So I didn't notice how much negativity your own head gives you, and that that's not normal necessarily, but for some people it definitely is. It blows my mind that some people just have nice minds that aren't anxious and are nice to them always and don't tell them people hate them. But it honestly was just being like, no, I don't deserve this. Even if I'm struggling with this feeling, I don't deserve this. And it was more thinking like, if I, not thinking about it myself, because I feel like we're always really harsh towards ourselves, but thinking, okay, if I had a best friend that was going through this and I loved them dearly and they were saying these things, I'd be like, what? That's ridiculous. You're amazing. So you kind of just have to take yourself out of it and be like, hey, what would any reasonable person other than you think? um, which has been helpful. And that's been like, oh, wow, I'm really hard on myself. And I don't think anyone will be as hard as we are on ourselves, except for maybe
Oh,
the internet trolls. But
we're our own worst critics, aren't we?
yes,
And the brain is a powerful thing and it can be to our detriment as well. So
absolutely.
it's
For me, I've just been trying to challenge that self-talk and acknowledge it. And then I've been doing a lot of affirmations. I know that might sound cliche, but I was like, I just need nice things repeated to me, which actually has helped. And so has, I guess, realizing that I realized that I put myself down so much and my work struggles as a result because I'm like, wow, I'm putting so many barriers ahead of myself when I already have so many barriers. Like, why? What if I just stopped and tried to love myself? And I know that's such a weird thing to say. I think some people might automatically love themselves. That's nice. But it's just a journey, I guess, being like, you know what? No, you do a lot of good things. You're not a bad person, which
But
is,
Zoe,
yeah,
you need to remember, Zoe, you're not alone because we all have self-doubt and we all have self-loathing. We all go through that. It's just how we come out of it and empower ourselves. And I think you're doing amazing. So you're doing a good job for yourself.
doing my best. I tell
Yeah.
myself that too,
And
just
that's
it's
all you
okay.
can ask. That's all you can ask is do your best. So what do you have any formal supports and informal supports around you that are able to help?
Quite
Whether that's
limited.
limited.
I don't really have any family around, or I guess all my close friends are disabled as well, so they can't really do much because they're dealing with their own lives. So, pretty much just my housemate, who is my bestie, and I also am on the NDIS. However, they don't recognize most of my disabilities. They only recognize my autism. So, like, I can't even get a ramp into my house with my wheelchair. They don't think I need that. They're like, yeah, get out in the community, but we can't help you get out in the community because it's not due to your autism. It's a bit ridiculous. The NDIS is amazing, but oh my goodness, it is a mess, especially at the moment, and people are suffering. So it's a lot.
Yeah, that's a
That's
whole
a
other
whole nother
podcast.
podcast.
Oh yeah, I was about to launch into. I'm like, wait, no, that's probably not the
Yeah, no, we're trying to stay away from that on this because as you said, we could go on for days
Yeah,
about the state of the NDIS and
time.
yeah.
how life changing it's in a bad way it's making people. So what makes you feel safe, respected, and genuinely included?
I think when people genuinely care about accessibility and inclusion, that makes me feel safe. Like when my access needs are seen as just something that we do rather than a hassle. I have been to events, for example, where I've asked, "Hey, would there be a sensory space because I'm autistic and conference is usually quite loud. They're usually blaring music and it's quite overwhelming." They would have it, but it would be just a room that the lights don't turn off, the doors don't close. It's actually just a storage room where people are mostly getting changed, and I just had to like hide in the corner, like, oh my gosh, um, I was going somewhere with that. I'm so sorry, brain fog.
That would make you feel quite disempowered, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry. We're talking about what empowers and disempowers. But yeah, that is an example of what it feels like when you don't really feel cared for. It's like, oh, it's just tokenistic checkbox. Oop, here you go, without actually caring for. So when people actually care about your access needs and ask, and you don't always have to be the advocate, it's so nice. Honestly, it just makes it's the most warm, fuzzy, inviting feeling, especially when it comes from non-disabled people. I'm just like, thank you. Honestly, you don't know how much that helps and how much we have to fight for our access every single day. So anyone who does anything to help, love you.
Yeah. And I think that shows just a genuine care and understanding rather than an afterthought. And I
Yeah,
think that there needs to be more around that. It's just including everyone, communicating clearly, and making sure everyone feels safe and welcomed into the
absolutely.
environment. Yeah.
And knowing that it's safe for people of all intersectionalities and identities too, whether you're LGBTQIA plus, whether you're autistic, whether you're, have certain disabilities, from a culturally, racially marginalized background. It's so important.
Yeah. We all breathe the same air and bleed the same blood, right? That's massive. So, what was I going to say? So, what are you doing now with your advocacy and things like that? What's happening in Zoe's life at the moment?
So I'm realizing that maybe a couple of years too late, but that my work actually has an impact and I don't do too badly. So there's been like a lot of really cool opportunities lately. I've been working on a lot of cool advocacy projects in terms of writing and supporting organizations. I've been working with other organizations, but I've also been getting more into the media, which is really, really exciting. Like I just co-hosted a TV show last year and I'm going to be co-hosting again and in talks to hopefully discuss more later today. So cross your fingers for me. But I'm basically just trying to use my lived experience and use my experience and my platform to make change, to make people think about disability and other things that I advocate for, but basically to just try and be a better person. Like I often get the messaging that, oh, you can't change the world, but we can change the world. All it takes is one little thing and it can make a huge difference to someone's world. For example, when I started talking about me using ability aids as someone that has an invisible and dynamic disability, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome with that too. And I felt like I wasn't disabled enough to use them. And, a lot of stigma around me, a lot of people saying, oh, that's shameful. Oh, you don't need that. Oh, push through. But when I actually started using, I'll say, a walking stick or a wheelchair for the first time, I actually cried with relief. So these things do make such a difference. And I wish we could just not be as stigmatized about them. I wish we could have, people experiencing disability and chronic illness actually be supported by the people around them and work on this ableism and stigma so that we don't all get absolutely destroyed by it because it really does harm everybody, even people that stand by it, I guess.
How do you balance being vulnerable with being a strong advocate?
Well, I'm autistic, so I don't really know what's appropriate or inappropriate to share. um, I overshare definitely, but I also do that, I guess, because I don't believe that we should feel shame for these things, and that's why I've always been really vocal about my bipolar, about my anxiety, and then once I found out I was autism, as well as chronic illness and disability and pain, because people have these things, and a lot of people don't feel like they can speak or advocate for themselves, and a lot of people are just silently suffering, and it's really not good enough. So I want to create change however I can, even if it's just one person.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone newly diagnosed or beginning to explore their identity as a disabled or neurodivergent person?
Firstly, welcome to the community. Despite what people might tell you, it is not a bad thing to be disabled. It can be a challenging thing, definitely, living with pain, living with illness, living with all the barriers and stigmas and attitudes that come with it, but you are not alone. The disability community is 20% of the population, and we are a strong community, has a rich history and a rich culture of really creating change. And I think this is an exciting time that, we are getting more recognition, we are getting more representation. The fact that we have disabled people on screens finally is a huge thing. So don't give up hope. The medical system and society in general can be pretty terrible with their gaslighting, but even if you don't have a diagnosis, even if you don't have supportive people around you, you are valid. And I know a lot of people can struggle with calling themselves disabled with this whole, am I disabled enough? And here's the thing, if it disables you, yes, you are disabled and you're allowed to call yourself disabled. There's not like any disabled police that are going to come after you and be like, oh, how dare you? I think the opposite, really. It's understanding, like, yeah, we have these shared experiences and these shared feelings, even though we might have different direct experience and disabilities. So I think it's like leaning on community. It's knowing that you're not the problem. It's working through your ableism, your internalized ableism. Hopefully the people around you will also do that. If not, you might need to get new people.
Where do you find these new people, Zoe?
Social
I'm,
media.
I'm hearing a lot about community, and you're not the only person to say that. It's people, a lot of past guests have said, go and find your community, go and find people you have something in common with. Where do you go to find these people?
I mean, this was actually a really big thing for me because when a couple of years ago, I, was experiencing pain, these horrible things that just turned my life upside down. I'd had surgeries. I still didn't have a diagnosis. So I felt so alone, and I was just posting out into the social media void, and then some disabled people answered back and said, you are valid even if you don't have a diagnosis, and you're part of this, you deserve, your access needs to be met. And that really, really, really helped. I've forgotten what I was saying, I'm so sorry. Oh, where do you find community? I remembered. So honestly, just social media, exploring hashtags, looking at creators. I've honestly found that I tend to just like follow someone I think they're cool and like respond to things until like I create a friendship. being an autistic adult is difficult, but yeah, you just find people that you vibe with and be like, oh my God, you're so cool. I think you're cool. And then end up hanging out. But there's also groups on Facebook. I found Chronically Fully Sick to be a great group on Facebook. There's just a whole bunch of chronically ill and disabled people, and it's got rants and memes and advice, and it's just the best group. There's also like disabled writers groups, like chronically ill and disabled writers. Not sure exactly what it's called, but Cully Finley runs it, and that's lovely too for connections in the community. But I also work at a place called Disability Rights and Culture, and we have a free disability network called Belong that we are trying to recruit people for. It's a free disability-led network where it's just a place to connect, and we're in this time of expansion, so like we want to grow and we want to change, so we'd love to have more disabled people join, and it's free. So yeah, there are ways. It is really hard, but I guess being brave a little bit. It can be hard when you can't leave your house, which is a big struggle for me. So a lot of my friends are online, but I think when you can go to those in-person events where there will be other disabled and chronically ill people and autistic people, it's just magical when you're around each other and there's just nothing but acceptance and love. It is really, it's beautiful and it's powerful.
How do we change the acceptance of disability?
That's a hard one because the stigma of disability is so ingrained, especially in, I've noticed, older generations. There's this attitude of do anything you can to not be disabled or use mobility aids because that's shameful and we suffer instead. I think it's just recognizing that it's a bit ridiculous, that there's no reason that we should have to suffer. And if there's something we can use that makes a difference in our life, even if you're, not disabled, but just slightly injured or something, and that would benefit you, you're allowed to. Like, why is there this strict thing about who can have something that benefits them? It's like, I don't know, people use glasses and that's fine, and they help you, and that's not stigmatized in the way that using a wheelchair or a walking stick is, or like I know a lot of people also struggle with using things like white canes. I've had a lot of friends tell me that they also feel the same, like, oh, afraid, but if we educate about disability, if we smash the stigma, if we show that lots of people are actually disabled and it's not a bad thing, we can still live great lives and we deserve to have our rights met, be a lot of change. I mean, I know that's a lot, but I think it comes down to education and changing attitudes. And I think we can do that through stories, which is why I love my work.
I can see you doing some great things, Zoe. I'll definitely be watching you closely as you go along.
Well, thank you. I am doing my best.
So, as we start to wrap up, what are your hopes for the future, both for Zoe and for the disability community?
For the disability community, I would just love to see less tokenism when it comes to organizations and government and so on, when it comes to disability representation, as well as co-design. A lot of people say co-design, but it's not actually co-design, and there should be nothing about us without us. There should be nothing without us, period. So, because we're 20% of the population and we have invaluable insights that benefit everybody, but somehow that's a wild suggestion. I just really hope that we can change this stigma and these attitudes, because it causes a lot of issues. It causes, mental health issues, it causes financial issues. Disabled people, for example, struggle often to get and keep jobs. Autistic people are 6 times more likely to be unemployed, and that's not because of anything we do wrong. It's just because of how society views autism and disability and flexible adjustments, which is ridiculous because, again, they benefit everybody. So who is making these ridiculous rules that only harm us, and why aren't we challenging them? Like, I tend to be known as the squeaky wheel, I guess, but I guess when I see something that I know isn't right and I know it impacts other people, I want to change it. So I guess that's my answer for me. I don't know exactly where I will go. Usually I just kind of experience my own lived experience and use that as a vehicle to be like, change, as well as like interviewing and sharing other people's stories. But I'm really hoping, I would love to actually write a TV show or host one. I'd love some way to platform disabled voices and give paid opportunities to intersectional people that aren't the ones we'd normally see in the limelight, because I notice we tend to have the same couple of disabled people that always get, the major things, and they're doing great work. I'm not dissing that. However, I think there is an obvious lack of diversity and intersectionality, especially for multi-marginalized groups. So I really want to actually be that change. It's not good enough that just the most privileged and palatable among the community have opportunities. So I want to directly create those. I guess I've been waiting to get those opportunities myself, and they just don't really exist, or they're limited, and it's not good enough. So I'm like, well, I'm going to pave the way, or bulldoze the way, and try and make things better. Try and make sure disabled people are paid. Try and make sure that workplaces have positions, and we'll do adjustments. Try to make sure events and shops, for example, actually think about accessibility and promote that. I want to change the world as I don't know if that sounds a bit funny, but I guess that's all I've ever do.
I love it. I love it. And if you don't have hope, you've got nothing. So, if there's lots of people out there like you that want to change the world, we might actually have half a chance.
It's worth trying, right?
Yeah.
What else are we going to do? Just sit on this floating space rock and do nothing?
Well, we can't change it if we don't try, so.
Exactly, and that's how change has never been made, by people not doing anything or not speaking up. So even though it might be uncomfortable, and it's scary for me, I do it because I think it's important, and I know if it's affecting me, it's affecting someone else, and that's what makes me mad.
Yeah.
On that note, Zoe, thank you so much for your time today. We've loved speaking to you, and we will let you know when it goes live.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Zoe.
It's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much.